Hi, my name is Mark Senek. I'm the author of the weblog Eye on FDA. I thought I would take the opportunity to put together some thoughts about the changing policy landscape and the impact I foresee on pharmaceutical marketing practices. One of the things, this presentation will occur in three parts. The first I want to address is the changing policy landscape. And I want to emphasize the fact that I'm doing this from the perspective of not only a professional communicator employed at Fleshman Hillard, an international communications firm, but I'm also a lawyer. And I emphasize that because I want to stress the fact that I'm sensitive to regulatory issues and that a lot of what I may say and suggest in the way of opportunities for pharmaceutical companies in terms of marketing may challenge traditional dogma of those in the regulatory side of the equation. But I think that the changing and shifting environment demands some new thinking. Certainly an indicator of change is to look and see anticipate what the 111th Congress will do, is to look to see what the 110th Congress was up to. 110th Congress launched a number of investigations, including ones aimed at direct-to-consumer advertising. They held hearings about various aspects of FDA approvals and pharmaceutical marketing practices, for example, having to do with Avandia. There were several letters from members of Congress to CEOs of pharmaceutical companies about marketing methodologies, particularly in light of timing of publication of clinical trials. There were letters from members to the FDA directly. You also saw a great deal of congressional research and GAO reports aimed at very specific practices. In particular, for example, the track record with respect to fast track and early authorization of pharmaceutical marketing. And you saw a number of pieces of proposed legislation that are probably going to come back in the 111th Congress with a great deal more potency. Here, for example, is a snapshot of the Energy and Commerce Committee taken in October 2008, 31 days. And what you see is a long track record within those 31 days on a variety of issues in which this one committee of the House of Representatives was engaged respecting the FDA and pharmaceutical practices, ranging from the evaluation of bisphenol A to a continuation of investigation on DTC. And also on this committee, you've seen a recent clash of the titans with the committee chair being held by Congressman John Conyers from Michigan, challenged by Congressman Henry Waxman of California, with Congressman Conyers stating that he was the friendlier candidate for industry. In this case, I think it bears quoting from the song in Man of La Mancha, whether the stone hits the pitcher or the pitcher hits the stone, it's going to be bad for the pitcher. In this case, Henry Waxman did succeed Congressman Dingell, which certainly portends that there will be a great deal of emphasis on not only FDA but consumer protection. Looking at DTC marketing, we can, I think, expect some changes. While certain members of the industry have announced a 6-month moratorium on direct-to-consumer advertising, I think that that is not enough for many members of Congress, and you can look for proposals for lengthier moratoria, ranging from 2 to 3 years after the launch of a product. I think you can look for requirements for companies to be more proactive than reactive in finding and encouraging reports of adverse events. And I think you'll also see a greater emphasis on transparency on the relationship between physicians, medical societies, and the pharmaceutical industry. Even though FDAAA brought greater sanctions for off-label promotion, I think that you still will see an unanswered hunger among members of Congress for greater sanctions. As I mentioned, greater transparency in the relationship between medicine and industry, requiring full disclosure in a number of venues and settings, and in particular CME funding, and whether or not CME funding has been influenced or has influenced the recommendations of physicians to their patients of prescription drugs. Safety, we've seen a great deal of emphasis on safety. I think we're going to see more of it, certainly through providing greater teeth on oversight on the part of the FDA over post-marketing commitments, the timely publication of clinical trials, and public access to trial information, foreign manufacturer inspections, and information about those inspections. And I think you'll look to see this Congress address the rift that is perceived to exist between the Approval Office and the Safety Office of the FDA. There's no question that Medicare Part D and importation and generic promotion are parts of the agenda not only for both of the presidential candidates, but for members of Congress as well. And I think that this merely emphasizes the fact that the outcome in Congress was much more important than the outcome of the presidential election in terms of reforms aimed at the FDA and at the current structure for Medicare Part D and importation. So what we see in conclusion in terms of the policy environment is that there is a Congress that is literally quite pregnant with the idea of reform, and much more unfettered than in the past to see those reforms come to fruition. Many of the changes, it is worth noting, that have been proposed are going to directly impact pharmaceutical marketing. And what you see is that the traditional means of reaching out to physicians and consumers is very likely to change in the near future. What I mean by that is direct-to-consumer advertising may change greatly with moratoria that run 2 to 3 years, a critical time for the uptake of new pharmaceutical products. Yet the key methodology that pharmaceutical marketers will use during this time is direct-to-consumer advertising to increase uptake of a new prescription product. But the other side of marketing strategy, the outreach to the physician, is also likely to face a great deal of change in the coming reforms. Therefore, the two traditional means by which pharmaceutical marketers have relied for many, many years to encourage the uptake of a new pharmaceutical product are just about to change. And it will have a very direct impact on the uptake of new products. That concludes this first portion of this Eye on FDA tutorial. Today I have discussed the changing policy environment. In the next segment I'm going to discuss the changing communications environment and the opportunities and challenges that presents to the pharmaceutical industry. Thanks for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you again.